What is going on, everyone? Welcome to another North to South show here, presented by Touchdowns to Home Runs. Of course, we're back to talk some more SEC football, as we always do. But guys, if you are here and watching this currently, give me a hi or a hello or anything in the comment sections. You guys honestly don't understand the constant support of all of you that show up to this, or even just watch the clips. You guys don't understand the support. So just you guys showing up and everything, hearing from you guys, I'd love to hear from you guys. And I just want to thank you guys personally, because honestly, I can't be doing anything that I do right now without you guys. So I really, really appreciate each and every single one of you that tune into these. And we got a packed slate today. Today, we're going to talk we're going to do a position battle. Oh, here we go. Hey, Credence Wood. Hey, no worries, dude. It's a part of YouTube, getting hate comments and everything like that. And I mean, I'm just 18 and I understand that I'm a kid from Canada and that I'm not going to know as much as Americans. It's just, I wasn't born to watch college football. I wasn't born to talk about college football, but I still love it. And I'm still going to come out here and talk about it regardless. So whether it's hard, I'm not going to lie. It's hard to hear stuff like that when you like pour your blood, sweat, and tears into your content like I do and everything, but you got to learn to work through it, because if you want to get anywhere in life, there's going to be people who do stuff like that. So I appreciate the supports, bud, and I hope you stick around for some more great content, because we got tons today. So as I was saying, we're going to talk some Georgia position battle, Georgia versus Texas A&M position battle. We're going to talk about their running back rooms and who I think has the better running back room, because we both know, or all of us know, that Georgia and Texas A&M both have one of the definitely better running back rooms in all of college football. Like, you talk about the best running back rooms in the nation, obviously I'm going to say my South Carolina Gamecocks, but you got Texas A&M, Georgia. I look at like Iowa State. I look at Oklahoma. I look at Texas. There are a lot of really, really, really solid running back rooms. And I think that Georgia and Texas A&M are definitely up there. So that's what we're going to talk about today, comparing those two. I'm going to go a Gamecocks current mood, or kind of like a mood tracker, if you want to put it, on how I feel approaching in to this 2021 season starting in May, because it is May now. And we just got announced that we have 100% capacity for next season, which is going to be tons and tons of fun, especially the fact that I'm at USC next year. So going to have a blast there, 100% capacity. And then we're going to finish up with our best versus the rest segment, where we break down an SEC versus an out-of-conference opponent game. And today we got Ole Miss at LSU, Ole Miss at versus Louisville. Sorry, that game is coming to you on a Monday. It's coming to you on Labor Day. Bit of a mix up there, and is coming to you from Atlanta, Georgia. So everyone, sit back, relax, enjoy, because we're going to get started right now with this. Whose running back room is better? The Georgia Bulldogs running back room or the Texas A&M running back room? Because I mentioned it a bit earlier. I look at these two teams and their running back rooms, and I think that they're both right up there for top 5, at least top 10 in the nation in terms of running back room. The depth and everything that you see in both of these running back rooms, just the pure and talent. I think that you have probably maybe three first rounders here. Again, that could be a bit of a stretch, because the way that the NFL is kind of shifting towards drafting running backs in the first round is really, really unlikely, just because the running backs are becoming such a liability. But I think you look at some of the guys here, they will be at the top of your class. Maybe not first rounders, maybe second, third rounders, but they will be at the top of their draft class for sure. So again, breaking down some of the better running back rooms in all of college football, I think Georgia and Texas A&M are up there. The reason why I'm not adding South Carolina into this, and because they are an SEC team and everything, because obviously as a Gamecock fan, you see I got the jersey here, I got the baseball jersey in the back. I'm going to think that South Carolina, I'm going to be a bit biased towards South Carolina. Not to say that I think Kevin Harris and Marshawn Lloyd are better than what Georgia has and what Texas A&M has, but naturally I tended towards South Carolina and saying that their running back room would be the best, because I'm just really, really high on Kevin Harris and really high on Marshawn Lloyd, which I think still we have one of the better running back rooms too. But to eliminate that kind of bias, I'm taking two teams that I don't have any bias towards. I like both teams in the sense that I think they both got talent in their rooms. Like, taking away the team, yes, I know South Carolina and Georgia are rivals, but I think the pure talent and just the guys on this Georgia running back room, I can find myself to cheer for, and this A&M running back room as well. So I just want to break down. What I'm doing here is I took my top 3 players from each running back room. We're going to take a look at some of their stats from last season, how they performed and everything like that. Then we're going to kind of go through, I want to break down who I think is the best running back out of all 6 of these guys that I have here. So we're going to get into who the guys are a bit later. And then I'm just going to finish off with who do I actually think is better? Who will perform better this season? Because I think one of these teams, and you might be able to guess it already, is way better, way better set up to have a more successful and on paper stat-wise to have a more successful season with the rushing game than the other team, which we'll touch on later. But let's start off with the Georgia Bulldogs, talking about them. So my 3 running backs I have for them, I took who I think are the 3 best running backs. Again, you could think completely differently, but I got Zamir White, obviously. At 2, I got James Cook. And then 3, I got Kendall Milton. Obviously, you could do McIntosh or you could do Edwards back there, which these stats that I'm about to tell you here are going to be a bit skewed because, of course, Kendall Milton, I think, only finished 5th in rushing for Georgia last season. I think Edwards and McIntosh both finished ahead of them. So if you look at the bottom guy and then I compare the bottom guy for Georgia, which is going to be Kendall Milton, to the bottom guy of Texas A&M, obviously it's going to look better for the A&M guy. But I just want to put that out there that Kendall Milton actually finished 5th overall in Georgia's running back room. And I think that he will have a big season for the Georgia Bulldogs this season behind Zamir White and James Cook. Look, Georgia's got 5 really solid running backs. So let's get into Zamir White stats first. First, he had 144 rushing attempts for 779 yards, 11 touchdowns, and a 5.4 average per carry. You look at James Cook, 45 rushing attempts, 303 yards, 3 touchdowns with a 6.7 yards per carry. And then Kendall Milton only had 35 attempts, 193 yards with a 5.5 average. Georgia last season, we know, especially at the beginning with the quarterback struggles and everything, they really relied on their ground game. And I think it worked for them. I think that this ground game really carried and made this offense at least what it was last season until JT Daniels finally got on the scene in Athens. Like, I take you to the Auburn game. That game was absolutely dominated by the rushing game and especially the offensive line too. Dominated on both sides of the ball, and Stetson Bennett didn't even throw the ball that much. Like, it wasn't like Stetson Bennett had some amazing game passing. He just did what he had to do in the passing game, and he just managed the game really well in the sense that Georgia could just rush the ball the whole time, and Auburn had nothing on the offensive line. And you look at other games, like I remember when Georgia played South Carolina, rushing the ball, it was hard to tackle Zamir White. It was hard to get Cook down. There was so many. Georgia stacked at the running back position, and I think they are RBU. Like, you look at the running backs that they've had in the past, going back to 2014, where I remember Todd Gurley, Sony Michel, Nick Chubb all being in the same room, and then you have DeAndre Swift, and now you got these guys, Zamir White, James Cook, who is, I think he's a cousin, I could be wrong, cousin of Dalvin Cook, or he's a brother of Dalvin Cook. I know that they are related, though, who is one of, if not a top 3 running back in the NFL right now. So I think Georgia, their running back room is clearly top of the nation, 110%. And now let's move on to A&M. So my top 3 guys for A&M, I'm looking at obviously Isaiah Spiller, who some people would say is the best running back in the nation, or alone say he's the best running back in the SEC. He had 188 rushes last year for 1,036 yards, so he hit over that 1,000 yard mark, 9 touchdowns, and a 5.5 average per carry last season. Isaiah Spiller's in the Heisman hunt right now. Like, he's a guy that if you go onto any betting site, you're going to see Isaiah Spiller's name. It might not be the greatest odds because we know the Heisman definitely favors the quarterback. It might be plus 2,000 or something like that. But just as a running back, being in the Heisman conversation means that you're a real deal. So Isaiah Spiller, he's up there. Let's talk about a younger guy, Devon Atchin. 43 attempts last season, 364 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 8.5 average per carry. Of course, that average stands out to you, 8.5. I'm telling you, this kid is something special. I remember watching the Orange Bowl against North Carolina, and it took me a while because this was like the first time that I really noticed Atchin as a running back. It was his big run. I'm pretty sure all Texas A&M fans know it. It was late in the game, and he just broke a couple tackles, rushed down the sideline, and the rest is history. Texas A&M wins that game. But I think that he is a real young stud that could have a huge breakout season, especially rushing the ball for A&M, because you might think, I've named Isaiah Spiller, I've named Atchin as my top 2 guys. Well, who am I missing at 3? If you look at the rushing dynamic compared to the passing dynamic, you're going to know who's at my number 3 spot and why I have him at number 3. At number 3, I had Ainias Smith for Texas A&M. 49 attempts last season, 293 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 6 average per carry. Action rushed more for Ainias Smith last season. And Ainias Smith had way more rushes, or only 6. He had 6 more attempts from him. But there's a huge but, and every single Texas A&M fan is going to know why there's a but on this. Ainias Smith led the Texas A&M Aggies in receiving last season. I love running backs who really play that versatile piece, and I think that that's a huge piece in college football nowadays, and really the NFL, because I look at my favorite NFL team, the Chicago Bears. We have David Montgomery, who's going to rush the ball more than Tariq Cohen, but Tariq Cohen is that faster guy. He's that pass catcher. He's that guy who can make plays out of the backfield. And I think Ainias Smith, honestly, I think I've heard at a spring for Texas A&M that he's taken a lot of wide receiver snaps or just really working on his receiving out of the backfield. So, yes, your rushing stats aren't there, but when you can receive out of the backfield, you look at Christian McCaffrey, best running back in all of in all of the NFL right now. It's because he can receive out of the backfield. So when you have a 3-headed monster back there with 2 guys that can really, really rush the ball well, and then a pass catcher in the backfield that puts up some serious stats and is actually your leader on your team in receiving, and then I think Weidermeyer was next, and I think it was Lane. You got something special back there. So now I want to talk about the best versus the best. So my best, I'm taking Zamir White, and I'm taking Isaiah Spiller, obviously. Not to say that James Cook isn't anything special. Not to say that Atchin and Ainias Smith aren't anything special. I think it's clear and obvious that Isaiah Spiller and Zamir White are going to be running back number 1 for both of these teams. Isaiah Spiller, I think his advantage over Zamir White, in my opinion, the physicality, I think, is just a bit more there. I love how Isaiah Spiller finishes off all of his runs, that he really, really fights for those extra yards. But something I think Zamir White does really, really well is finding the holes, especially rushing up the middle. And he's just always has an eye or a taste for the open field. You always see him. You look at any of his highlights, you think that there's no chance that he gets open and he's able to rush it for 20 plus yards, but he does. Zamir White just has such a knack for finding the holes and just getting into open field. And that's where Georgia really, really likes Zamir White. And I think that's where he really, really comes down to and really makes him successful. I take Isaiah Spiller in this sense. I mean, the stats say I should take Isaiah Spiller, but I'm not only taking him because of that, because like Spiller did have 44 more rushes than Zamir White, but Isaiah Spiller broke 1,000 yards. I think Isaiah Spiller is the nationally respected running back in all of college football. You look at like him, Breece Hall, Bijan Robinson are probably going to be your top 3 guys going into next season. Isaiah Spiller, I just like the physicality when he's there. There's just a lot I like about him. So I'm going to go Isaiah Spiller is the best out of those 6 guys. I'd give Zamir White number 2. I wouldn't say, I'm not going to go and rank all 6 of them, but I would have Isaiah Spiller 1 and then Zamir White as a close second. And then what room do I think will perform better in total? Because it's a very interesting question, because I think that right now on paper, if you ask me what's going to happen at the end of the season, Texas A&M's stats are going to look a lot better than Georgia's. And that's because a bunch of different reasons. First of all, looking on the Texas A&M side of the ball, they have a new quarterback in Haynes King this year, freshman. Their offensive line isn't that good in pass protect right now. So you're really, really, really going to rely on your rushing game this season. So you're going to see way more rushes than you are passing for Texas A&M. Bottom line for them. And then you look at Georgia. Georgia's been really, really good and dominant in the rushing game this season. But I think Monken and I think that JT Daniels are really starting to air it out. Not to say that the rushing game is being put to the wayside, but I think that they're going to start passing the ball a lot more than you've seen in recent years, because JT Daniels is one of the better quarterbacks in all of college football right now. So why not, if you have this star quarterback and you got a really good receiving core, why not chuck the ball around a couple more times instead of having to rush it every single time? So I think on paper, Texas A&M is going to be more successful in terms of the end of the season just because of their situation. But all in all, I think as a room, who would I take? Listen, I love the Georgia guys. I think the Georgia guys are all amazing running backs, and I think that they're all going to have a career outside of college football. But the A&M factor, that they have the 2 guys that can rush the ball up the middle, they can rush the ball to the outsides, and then you also have that versatility where you also have a very, very, very good pass catcher out of the backfield. Not to say that none of the Georgia guys are good out of the backfield catching, But when you have a guy who's leading your team in receiving out of the backfield, and then you have a two-headed monster of guys who can really pound the ball up the middle, I think A&M is really, really, really in for a treat this season in the rushing game. If you have the same offensive line as you do last year, your offensive line is to be able to glue themselves back together and really work on getting experience and everything, Texas A&M's rushing game could be the best in the country. Again, that offensive line is going to be the big question mark. If Haynes King, I think that they really, really, really need to work the rushing game in just to get him more comfortable, of course, coming in for his first season as being the starter at Texas A&M. So all in all, I'm taking A&M as the better running back room, but both of these running back rooms are top 5, top 10 running back rooms in the nation, 110%. So that was our first segment. Who do we got? Let's see. What do we got here? Yes, talk is Pitt. I mean, college football is good for discussion. I don't know if you're still in here. Talk is Pitt. I'd love to hear from you again, but like, why play sports if we can't talk about it? And like, would any sports really be good if we had other opinions? I know I said it. I don't know the most about Pitt. Hand up. That's on me. But I'm just saying, like, you could have just come at me more respectfully. And I know it's all over. I have no hard feelings against you. You can feel how you want to feel against me, and you could get people to come in the chats, which it looks like you have. But again, on me. Let's see here. Who do I have in the SEC championship? Great question, because I think it's such the basic answer. It's such a basic answer, but it's Alabama and Georgia. There's such a gap. I think if any other team's going to get in the SEC championship, other than those two teams, I'd have to go with Texas A&M. Honestly, I think Texas A&M is the only other team to have a chance to make it to that place. I don't know what I think about Florida. I think that there's still a lot to be told about Florida. There's still a lot to watch about Florida. But Alabama and Georgia, I just feel like are such a step ahead of what they're in. Like, you take Alabama and Georgia, and I think Texas A&M and Florida are pretty much the second place teams, but I still see such a gap there between those two teams. So, yeah. Nate Newton, sorry. Great question. Love that. Any more questions? I'll take some questions before I get into the other the next whatever you want to call it, next segment. Hey, I'll bring up this comment. I'm not afraid to take charge of what I said and everything. Like, yeah, I understand Pitt, Talk is Pitt had a very descriptive paragraph to me. And I said at the beginning of those videos, I was like, I don't know the most about Pitt, and that's on me. Again, I said it, hand up and everything. You can hate me if you want. I'm the kind of guy, I'll admit my mistakes. I'm not embarrassed to do that. So, yes, he said that you guys are ruthless and everything, and that can't do anything about that. Again, that's on me. I don't know what else to say. Any other questions? If it looks like we don't got anything else, who do you think? Oh, I love this. I know we don't talk baseball all that much on this, but I think Arkansas is such a good team. I know Vanderbilt's the pitching. Like, you look at Leiter and you look at Kumar Rocker to be like the main guys, and like, oh, Vanderbilt's pitching is going to win them. I think that Arkansas's lineup just matches up really, really well, and they have been swinging the bats amazing, absolutely amazing recently. And I think Arkansas is a really good team. So I think, although I want my Gamecocks to win, where's the jersey? I want my Gamecocks to win so bad, and we got a big series versus Tennessee. I also think, don't count out Tennessee. Tennessee's had some big wins recently, so I wouldn't count out Tennessee either, but I think Arkansas is just a very, very, very well-rounded team right now, and their lineup is insane. Like it is really, really fun to watch Arkansas baseball. I can tell you that. Really fun. Okay, so with that being said, let's get to our next segment of talking about a Gamecocks fan mood tracker. Because as you know, Gamecocks jersey here, Gamecocks baseball jersey in the back. I am a Gamecocks super fan. And going into the season, the Gamecocks have a new head coach. Obviously, Shane Beamer coming in this season. What is the mood of Gamecock fans right now? How are we feeling? And what do we expect for this season? Because I think that there are multiple different pieces of the fan base. You're going to have the over optimistic, which are people who are going to think that we're going to win like 9 games or something like that. You're going to have the under optimistic, the people that for some reason think that we're only going to get like 2 or 3 wins or something like that. And then I think I find myself in the middle. And I hope that I can be seen as a realistic, optimistic, but realistic at the same time. And that's what I'm going to kind of be going for here. And by the way, I just released my South Carolina football hats in my store, North to South Show hats. So definitely go check that out. If you are a Gamecocks fan like myself, I already have my North to South Show base one, and I might have to jump on getting that South Carolina one as well. But the hats are amazing. The stitching and everything, the logo looks amazing. Go get yours, only $25. Hit the link in the description, or you could hit the little notification up there. Well, another good piece about Carolina football before we even get talking into next season. Just today, I think only a couple hours just before I started this live stream, the Gamecocks made their capacity 100%, not only for baseball. Baseball happened a couple of days ago. We're getting 100% capacity. The Tennessee series this weekend. But Williams-Brice Stadium will be full, 80,000 plus going into next season. So if that alone doesn't get you hyped up for next season, no matter what we put out, no matter what the product we put out on the field is, I think that that's enough to get excited about for next season, especially after this season having reduced capacity and everything. So thrilled for that. But let's talk about Shane Beamer in his first season. What am I expecting as a Gamecock fan? What is my mood right now? And I think my mood ever since Shane Beamer has got hired for the Gamecocks has been optimistic. Like, I think as the days go on with Shane Beamer as their head coach, I think all of Gamecock Nation is really falling in love with this guy and really, really, really loving the culture that he's building around the program. He's starting to get some big recruits in, slowly getting recruits. He's got a lot of transfers and everything like that. And just when you watch how he interacts with the players and everything they put out on social media, and some of you look at that and you just think it's a gimmick thing, everything you see on social media, of course, they're only going to show this good stuff. But news is news, and seeing stuff, anything is always good. Seeing anything good is always good. Yes, it might not be the 100% clear picture, but anything we see is anything. It's not like we're sitting in the football facility 24/7 and we're able to take every single thing in that we see. So I really like what Shane Beamer's doing in the program. I liked how he interacted with the players at the spring game, everything that you saw there. And all in all, Shane Beamer, I think so far has been an amazing hire. I have no complaints with Shane Beamer so far. And I think that he's going to do well this season. I'm not expecting the Gamecocks to get 8 wins or something like that. I want to win a national championship, but you have to be realistic at the same time. Talking about this offense a bit, kind of my expectations and my mood about that. The spring game has made me more optimistic about the offense, especially the receiver position. I really, really like where Dak Joyner is headed at the receiving position. I feel like he's really, really worked on his hands. We know he has the athleticism to be a great wide receiver. We know that the hands the last couple seasons just haven't been there, and it seems like he's worked a lot on that. So I'm excited to see him progress through next season. EJ Jenkins, obviously coming from St. Francis, Jason Brown's teammate. Really, really, really am high on him and how he was able to produce at the spring game. And maybe if we get Jason Brown at the quarterback position, that's going to be fun. Running back is going to be the running back position. We didn't see Kevin Harris or Marshawn Lloyd in the spring game, but ask any Gamecock fan and they will be as high as the roof. Even through the roof, they'll punch through the ceiling talking about Marshawn Lloyd and Kevin Harris. But another guy under that who you saw perform really, really well in the spring game, Saquandre White, had an amazing spring game, and he's another guy could break out on the scene, could have a triple-headed monster in the backfield for the Gamecocks. I think the O-line is just fine. I think it's experienced. I think we got a lot of talent back there. In the quarterback position, Luke Doty versus Jason Brown, it's kind of settled. Of course, it was a big thing after the spring game and everything where you saw Jason Brown have a couple really, really good drives and everyone's like, oh, I want Jason Brown starting. I'd still like to see a bit of a battle there, but I'm still confident that Luke Doty will be the starter by the end of the season. I'm confident in Luke Doty's agility and everything like that and his escapability. The one thing that I just like to see from him is accuracy downfield. I think that that's something that all Gamecock fans want to see because last season that was kind of his only miscues was just he couldn't really hit a ball downfield. So that is something that's going to be kind of a concern with this offense. But all in all, I think the offense is in a better spot after the spring game than what I thought it was at the beginning. So the offense has made some really, really good improvements since then. And just all in all, my mood for the Gamecocks offense, I wouldn't say we're going to be a team that puts up 40 plus points each and every game, but I like to touch the 40 mark in against teams like Vanderbilt, who again, we touched 40 against them last year. I think we should definitely do it against like Eastern Illinois and games like that, but maybe even against an SEC opponent that is not a Vanderbilt or something like that. Maybe we go and do it against Tennessee. Maybe we do it against Kentucky, Mizzou, one of those teams. I'd really like to see just this offense just have a really, really dominant game against an SEC team. Overall, I'm optimistic about it, but I don't expect us to be that team to put up 40 plus points each and every single game. Defensively, I still think that the defensive front could be one of the best in the SEC. I know I might be getting ahead of myself where because you still have some amazing D lines. I look at Florida. I think they got an amazing D line. I think Georgia probably has a top 2 in the country, maybe. Them and Clemson's are really good. As much as I hate to say because I am a Gamecocks fan, I think Alabama will be really good up front. But you look at the talent that South Carolina has on this D line. Jordan Birch, Zach Pickens, Kinsley Enikbari, SEC defending sack leader. He had an amazing season last year. I like Jabari Ellis. I like Jordan Strachan. There's a bunch of guys that are really, really likable and a bunch of physical dudes who are going to get to the quarterback. Of course, I think we need to see Zach Pickens and Jordan Birch. We all know the stars next to their name. We'd all like to see a bit of improvement or factor from them. Like if Kinsley Enikbari was Jordan Birch, like you season that he had last year, you put him in Jordan Birch's position. I think that Jordan Birch is one of the highest talk players in all of Gamecock football, but it's just the stars next to him. I love to see those guys perform better, and I think they can. They have the talent. We just got to see it. Linebacker position, I think it's okay. I don't think it's a weakness of this defense. I think we all know what the weakness of this defense is, but I think it's okay. I think, again, who are you going to have back there? I think you're going to have like Tonka at the outside linebacker position. He's going to be just fine. I think we're going to be fine at the linebacker position. The secondary is where the concerns come in. You obviously turn to Cam Smith to be the leader of this secondary. You lose J.C. Horn. You lose Israel McQuamu. You lose Jamie Robinson to the transfer portal. You lose a couple of really, really good guys to your secondary. You even look at how this secondary performed last season, and you look at all that talent that they had, but as a whole, collectively, they didn't perform that well. So maybe when the defensive scheme changes, this defense and the secondary will just be put in a better situation. So that's something that I'm also slightly optimistic about is the whole coaching change and how that really rolls over into this defense, because we know last year the secondary was a huge concern. Even though we had the 8th overall pick in the NFL draft on that secondary, we had another draft pick across from him, and then we had Jamie Robinson now going on to Florida State, which I think he was a really good player. The secondary is going to be the weak spot of this whole team, really. I kind of want to say that. I think the wide receiver position has got better. I said that the wide receiver position was a weak spot of this team before the spring game, but now that I think about it, I think that this secondary has kind of moved into that main weakness spot. So that's just that for them. What I expect record-wise, I think that the Gamecocks and Shane Beamer can have a successful and progressive season even without making a bowl game. I just want to see competitive games, and I think that that's what all Gamecocks fans would love to see. I'd rather see 12 competitive games, and that even means a competitive game against Eastern Illinois, a competitive game against East Carolina, a competitive game against Vanderbilt, all those teams, and still have somewhat of a competitive game against your Georgia, your Clemson, your Florida, teams like that, your Texas A&M, then kind of split it, win the games that you're supposed to, like the Eastern Illinois, East Carolina, the Vanderbilt games by a really big margin, but then just get run out of town by the other teams. I think that there's still progress to be shown in just making the games that you're not supposed to win close. Like, I'm not talking be within a touchdown with 2 minutes left, have the ball in the fourth quarter. I'm even talking change the Clemson game. Let's say make Clemson, instead of them running us out of town and it being 56-3, have the same start that you did in Alabama 2019, where it was enough to get you out of your seat and get you really, really excited for the rest of the game. Now, Alabama still restored order after that, and they beat Carolina pretty good. The score says they beat Carolina pretty good. But for those of you who are watching the game, the first couple quarters, you were like, man, we are hanging in with Alabama. You know what? We have the talent to hang in with this team right now. If we just get a few more guys, maybe we're at the level where we're only going to be a 7-point underdog to Alabama. And then after, maybe only a 3-point underdog, and just stuff like that. So little stuff like that, looking at these games and just making them competitive. I look at the Clemson game, the Georgia game, and the Texas A&M game. All I want is competitiveness. I don't expect them to win. Of course, I love them to win. I don't expect it. I think you need wins against Eastern Illinois, again, East Carolina, Vanderbilt, all those guys. I think those should all be wins. SEC East wins, I think, again, Vanderbilt should be a win. I think Tennessee should be a winnable game. You go to Neyland Stadium, but I still think that there should be a shot of us winning there. I think Kentucky should be a winnable game, although I think that they're an underrated team going into the season, and they're going to be a lot better than many people think. I think Missouri, they're probably going to come in favored. I'd say that pretty confidently. I think that it should, again, I just want a really, really good competitive game. And then you look at Florida. I even think many people are high on Florida. I think Florida comes into Columbia and we give them a run for their money. I'm not saying that we're going to be favored going into this game and that we should win, but I do think that we could compete with Florida and maybe come out. That might be our biggest win of the season. Maybe come out with a win against Florida. I know we all want a bowl game. I want a bowl game too. I think that is my expectation. I think that's all our expectation. That's where kind of my mood is at, that I want to make a bowl game go to. I don't care what bowl game. It could be one of the lesser ones. I don't think that that's the point, what bowl game we get to this season, as long as we get to one. But don't be discouraged and don't get on the fire Shane Beamer train. If this team does go 5-7, if they do go 4-8, if we are able to play competitive games against some of those teams I've named before, because progress doesn't only apply on paper. Progress is a visible thing too. Just remember that going into the season. So that's kind of my mood right now on the South Carolina Gamecocks. So those are my first two segments. Now we're going to get into, I'm just going to go into a short little break, get my breath, and then we're going to go back and get into Ole Miss versus Louisville. So I'll be right back, guys. Appreciate it. Stick around. While I'm out taking a drink of water and catching my breath to bring you guys some more amazing content, let me tell you how you guys can contribute to the TDSTOHRS brand. Number 1, as easy as it sounds, nothing helps us out more than your constant support through watching the videos, liking the videos, being subscribed, and commenting. Your engagement is what is most important to us here at TDSTOHRS, and we appreciate your support. Number 2, channel memberships. Down below next to the subscribe button, you will see a button that says join. Click it to join one of our 2 tier levels. Each tier level comes with exclusive emojis and badges, and the upper tiers get exclusive content not available to other subscribers. Payments are monthly, and memberships start at $2.99 a month and only go up to $5.99 a month. 3. In the description, there will be a link for direct contributions to the channel. This is completely voluntary, and the funds you decide to forward us will be used to improve the quality of our content. Your support to the TDSTOHR brand means the world to us, guys, because without you guys, there is no channel. So this is our channel. Thank you for your constant support, and now let's get back to some great content. Let's continue on with the show. Okay, so we just got some fan questions that I want to touch on quickly. We'll go to why did we fire Will Muschamp last season, and you have SC going 6-6. I mean, I think I picked in my predictions video, I have Tennessee or South Carolina going 6-6 as well. I think that 6 wins are definitely on the table, and I think that bowl is definitely in the reach. And why did we fire Will Muschamp? We hired him for his defense, and he was a so-called defensive specialist, and the defense was atrocious last year. The offense, don't even get me started. He wasn't a bad guy. Like, I don't think anything bad about Will Muschamp as a person, just the direction that the program was headed and everything. It was not a way that the Gamecocks wanted to. And we were just going downhill and going downhill fast on both sides of the ball. The only really bright spot last season was Kevin Harris. So that's kind of why we had to let go of Will Muschamp. Again, nothing against him personally. I still think he's a great guy, but from the football side, it was time for him to go. We'll take Auburn football highlights. I'm going to be honest here, not being biased or anything, but I think Auburn's defense is stacked and could definitely be one of the best in the SEC for the next few years. I mean, let's see what Brian Harsin does. I think that the secondary has a lot to show for Auburn. I think the Auburn secondary could definitely be one of the best in the SEC. So 110%. Maybe Brian Harsin turns things around for Auburn in the next coming years. We could see Auburn in the playoff for the first time. How do you think Arkansas will go next year? I mean, I'm optimistic about Arkansas. I really think that this team could easily make a bowl game. I'd love to see. Our opinion about Arkansas is going to be made after that Texas game. Even if they lose the Texas game, if they make that game competitive and it's down to the wire, I think people are going to start nationally respecting Arkansas more than they do now. So I think Arkansas should make a bowl game this year. I think that they are a middle of the pack SEC West team. I mean that they're not like a top 2 team or something like that, but I still think that they are top 4. I think I have them sitting at 4 right now. I think I have them sitting at 4. That's what I'll put Arkansas. And then, yeah, SC will probably go 6-6. Completely agree with that. Completely agree with that. Okay, that means we get into our last segment. Last segment, guys. And for our last segment, we have our best versus the rest segment. Of course, that is where we break down an SEC game that is an SEC team versus a non-conference opponent. And today we got one on opening weekend. It's opening Labor Day weekend, and this game is being played on a Monday. I'm pretty sure it's Monday, September 6th, as Ole Miss and Louisville meet up in Atlanta, Georgia, in Mercedes-Benz Stadium on Labor Day to play a big neutral site game. I mean, some of the neutral site games that you'll see on this day, on this weekend, you'll have Miami, Alabama, which is being played here 2 days prior. You're going to have Georgia, Clemson, which is the game of the year, in my opinion. LSU, UCLA, I know that that's not a neutral site game, but you have some stacked, really, really good quality. Penn State, Wisconsin, week 1 is going to be absolutely stacked. And I'd love to talk about all of them, but for the sake that this is an SEC show, I won't talk about all of them. Louisville and Ole Miss. Louisville finished 12th in the ACC last year. They went 4-7, but I think that if you take Louisville on paper, that's not the team that you're going to get this season. And I think a lot of Louisville attributed last season was their turnover margin was terrible. Like, I think that they were minus 12 or something like that in turnover margin. It was terrible. And you look at some of the bigger games that they played in, how many of those really were caused by those turnovers and close games, one-score games. You look at losing by 13 to Miami, which Miami was ranked at that time. You look at losing to 3 by Pitt, and you look at losing to only 5 by Notre Dame. Notre Dame and Louisville played a 12-7 game, which is something that you definitely don't see often. If Louisville can pick up some of the things and some of the problems that they had last season with holding on to the ball, you might see Louisville at least as a 5-6 team, maybe even flipped out a 6-5, and maybe even 7-4, something like that. I think Louisville has some talent on this team, especially last year. They had tons of talent, especially at the wide receiver position. Just was not able to hold on to the ball when it mattered most. Ole Miss last season, I think Ole Miss is arguably the team that I'm most high on in the SEC, or the team that I overrate the most, as many of you would put it. And by the way, just put out my North to South show, Ole Miss hat. So go click the link in the bio or hit that little notification and get yours. I think that the Ole Miss ones are the nicest one by all of them. I've said that about the Ole Miss and Auburn ones. Those are the 2 nicest out of all the hats. So definitely, if you're an Ole Miss fan, go get yours. Only $25 in our store. Ole Miss is a team that I'm very high on this season. We all know the story with how this is such an offensive-powered program. Lane Kiffin came in his first season at Ole Miss, and even though they went 5-5 last season, I still think that this was a huge checkmark season, a huge positive for Ole Miss and their fans, because you look at that Alabama game. They were competitive. I'd say that they probably had the second best game against Alabama compared to any other team, and I'd say Florida had the best. I mean, that SEC championship game, it was really coming down to the wire at some points, and let's say if John Mechie doesn't force that fumble on the Florida secondary or on the Florida DB, that game could be going down into a last-second drive for Alabama. Who knows? Who knows? That turnover was a big turning point in that game and how it finished and everything. Matt Corral is one of the best quarterbacks in all of college football. I'm high on that. I think that Ole Miss has a really good running back room in Ely and then Snoop Connor back there. The receiving core obviously took a huge hit due to um, Elijah Moore leaving onto the NFL, obviously, but I think you still got some talent on this wide receiving core. I look at Sanders, especially, tons of talent still left on this wide receiver core for Ole Miss to still have just as successful of an offense as they did last season. Louisville, Malik Cunningham is the quarterback there, and he's still going to be the quarterback this season. I'm off and on about him. I have mixed opinions on him. I still think he's a good guy, and I still think that if he makes more consistent plays and is better on a more consistent basis, he could definitely be one of the top tier quarterbacks in all of the ACC this season. It's just interceptions are a problem with him. He threw 12 last season, threw for 20 touchdowns, and he is a mobile threat. I tell you, Malik Cunningham is a mobile threat. I think he either finished first or second in his team in rushing last year. Like, I think he had over 600 yards rushing on the ground last season. Malik Cunningham is going to be a really, really good quarterback next season for Louisville if he can remain consistent. You'll look at the losses to Atwell and then Fitzpatrick on the outsides, who are the only two Louisville draft picks from this NFL draft class. It's going to be tough to replace those guys. I think that you're going to look at the rushing game to be a bit more reliable. In this sense, you also lose Hawkins. I think he signed as an undrafted free agent. You lose him also this season. So you're going to have to get the ground game going, and you're going to have to get just the ground game going in your offensive line. I think I looked at the offensive line. They look like a really experienced group. Again, I don't know. I'm not going to act like I know everything about Louisville. I'm not a Louisville fan. I'm not that big of an ACC guy. But just looking at their offensive line and the years that they've played, I see a lot of experience on that offensive line. So I think that the rushing game is definitely going to have to be more of a factor this season for Louisville. I think defensively for both of these teams, I could speak to the same thing. They're both going to be weaker. They both gave up a lot of points last season. There's no way around it. So I have this game as a true shootout, and I don't know what better way we could spend a Labor Day Monday than finishing up with some college football after a stacked week with this game that is just going to be an offensive shootout. Because sometimes I just like sitting and watching teams run up the scoreboard. And when it is Lane Kiffin's mind behind that offense, I think it is a really, really fun thing to watch. So I'm high on this game. I think that this game is going to be great. Let's look at some keys for Ole Miss to win, because obviously I do this for the SEC teams. I think Ole Miss doesn't need to be the team on defense to force Louisville to punt every single drive. I don't think that they need to do that to win this game. I think that with Louisville's inconsistency in terms of holding onto the ball and forcing bad turnovers, if Louisville gives you the opportunity to give you the ball back, you just got to take advantage of that one or two times. Win the turnover battle, and I think Ole Miss is just fine in this game. I think going into what the point spread will be going into this game, I'm looking at Ole Miss by 8.5 in this game, and you just don't want to give them those points. You don't want to give them those 8.5 points that can really put them in a position to win this game. So just get your turnovers. Your offense will be fine. I say just ride the offense. Let Matt Corral do what he does. That's another key to the game. Just let him do what he does. Let him rush all over the field. Let the running back game do their thing, because I think Ely and Snoop Connor this season are going to be two dynamic guys in the SEC this season. Other than that, I don't think that there's much to say that Ole Miss needs to do different from what they did last year offensively. Obviously, Matt Corral can't have the game that he had against Arkansas and just be throwing 6 interceptions in one game. But if Ole Miss stays solid on their offense, I think that this Louisville offense is good. Like, don't get me wrong. I think they'll easily put up 30 plus points in this game, but I'm looking at, like, if I had to give a final score prediction for this game, I'm looking at like a 45-35 win for Ole Miss in this game. I like Louisville's offense. I like Malik Cunningham going into next season. Do I think that they're a team that can go out and score 30 plus points on a consistent basis? No, I do not, especially not after last season and them losing some big guys in Atwell and Fitzpatrick. And then you look at also Hawkins in the rushing game. So I think both of these teams are going to be good. I think moods can definitely change when this game finally comes. But all in all, I would take Ole Miss 45-35 in this game. Again, it's going to be an offensive shootout. Lots of touchdowns to be scored in this game, 110%. So that was our last segment, everyone. If you guys have any more comments, I'd be happy to answer. But other than that, we'll wrap it up. Do I think Bama could do the same thing as they did last year? I think 110%. Like, Nick Saban could honestly have anyone. And like, people will say, oh, they have tons of great talent on that team, which they always do. Alabama, the players on that team are always top tier, but there are teams that do have those top tier guys and haven't won a national championship in goodness knows how long. I look at like Georgia. Georgia has really, really good talent on their teams. Always, especially the last couple seasons. So why don't they have a national championship? And I think it starts with the head man. I'm not saying Kirby Smart is a bad coach, but you compare him to a level at Nick Saban, and I think that Nick Saban just outsmarts the guy. And Nick Saban, that's the reason why he is one of the better coaches in all of college football. So it looks like that's it. Thank you guys for tuning in today. Like down below, subscribe. Thank you for watching. I appreciate all of your support, and come back next time.